Hi there. Today we're going to explore the plot of the 2002 film, The Magdalene Sisters. The events take place in Ireland in 1964. The film begins with the story of a young girl named Margaret. Together with others, she is enjoying a family wedding. At a certain point, her cousin calls her aside and begins to get inappropriately close, clearly crossing her personal boundaries. Margaret returns to the guests in tears and tells one of her relatives what happened. The woman passes the information to Margaret's father, who becomes very concerned. The next morning, her father wakes Margaret and orders her to pack quickly. Her younger brother sees from the window as their sister is taken away. The second story concerns Bernadette. She is woken by twin sisters with whom she lives in an orphanage. They brush her hair and ask if it's a sin to be beautiful. Bernadette replies that it is not. Even the Virgin Mary was beautiful. Outside, she flirts with some boys, and the orphanage director notices. In the next scene, we see Bernadette's bed is empty. The third story is about a girl named Rose, who gave birth to a child out of wedlock. She begged her mother to at least look at the baby, but the mother refused. Her father took Rose to a priest, who said that the child should be given up for adoption. At first, Rose agreed, but later changed her mind. However, she was no longer allowed to see her baby. Next, we see the girls working hard at the Magdalene Laundry, a place they were sent to by their families. One of the nuns brings Margaret, Bernadette, and Rose to Sister Bridget, who explains the philosophy of the institution. Through prayer and hard labor, a fallen soul can find her way back to the Lord, just as Mary Magdalene once did. Life here follows a strict routine. The nun makes it clear that the girls have no rights. From now on, Rose will be called Patricia. All three are sent to the laundry, where they will work every day. Before bedtime, they are shown their shared room and are forced to pray. At night, Rose becomes ill and asks Bernadette to take her to the bathroom. Another girl advises against waking the nuns. They do not tolerate such things. During the morning wake-up call, they are told that one of the girls, Una, has escaped. They ask if anyone saw anything, but no one answers. They are led to breakfast. The girls' food is very basic, unlike that of the nuns who eat separately. They are only allowed to work in silence. The girls are supervised by Katie, a former resident who has spent 40 years there. Bernadette manages to talk a little with another girl, Crispina, but they are interrupted by Katie, who complains that the nuns are overwhelmed because of Una's escape. At night, Margaret prepares to escape, but her father arrives with the nuns. He says she no longer has a home and will stay here forever. This makes Margaret give up the idea of fleeing. At the laundry, Seamus and his young colleague Brendan bring in clothes. Later, Crispina's sister arrives at the gates of the institution with her young son. Crispina doesn't even know the boy's name and can only look at him from a distance. She wears a medallion of St. Christopher around her neck and believes it spiritually connects her to her son. Meanwhile, Brendan begins to behave inappropriately with Bernadette. When his actions cross the line, she abruptly pushes him away. Soon after, Bernadette demands a meeting with Sister Bridget, which angers the nuns. Crispina also receives a reprimand. Both girls are taken to Bridget, who had previously shaved another runaway girl almost bald. That night, Bernadette suggests to Rose that they escape, but Rose believes they have no chance. In the next scene, we see Bernadette kissing Brendan and proposing that they run away together and get married. She allowed Brendan to look under her dress. They agreed to escape that same night, since Seamus had the keys to the back door. At that moment, one of the nuns caught them. Later, Bernadette begged her not to tell anyone, saying she wouldn't be able to handle the consequences emotionally. That night, Bernadette began to carry out the escape plan. But at the last moment, Brendan got scared and didn't open the door, recalling how his brother had been sentenced to 6 years in prison just for stealing apples from a monastery garden. Brendan drove away, and Bernadette was caught. She was punished harshly for that her hair was cut off. Months of hard, exhausting labor passed. One day in the shower room, the nuns openly mocked the girl's physical flaws. Crispina couldn't bear it and burst into tears. Before bed, she soaked her nightgown in ice-cold water and went to sleep. The next day, during breakfast, she became ill with a fever. Margaret helped her back to bed. Bernadette found Crispina's lost St. Christopher pendant on the floor and hid it in her pocket. Soon after, Crispina noticed it was missing and began to panic. Margaret promised she would look for it outside. Meanwhile, outside the gates, Rose noticed Crispina's sister with her son and tried to signal to her that Crispina was sick. That night, Crispina tried to harm herself, but the other girls noticed in time and stopped her. Margaret began convincing Crispina that one day she would reunite with her son, but Bernadette believed it was wrong to give her false hope. When everyone was asleep, Bernadette tried to return the pendant by placing it under the pillow, but after seeing Crispina smiling in her sleep, she changed her mind. One day, all the girls were taken outside. From the window, Margaret saw Crispina and the priest behaving extremely inappropriately. In honor of a religious holiday, the girls were allowed to celebrate in the courtyard. Secretly, Margaret gathered poisonous plants into a handkerchief. Despite the gates being unlocked and having a chance to escape, she didn't take it. Crispina scolded Margaret for not keeping her promise. In an emotional outburst, Margaret found the pendant among Bernadette's belongings and attacked her. That night, when Rose asked why she had done it, Bernadette replied that Margaret supposedly hadn't suffered enough. While doing laundry, Margaret discreetly sprinkled the poisonous herbs onto the priest's robe. Later, all the girls were taken into the city for a celebration. Once they were outside the city, the priest began to recite a prayer, but suddenly his skin began to itch and burn. In a panic, he started stripping off his clothes right in front of everyone present. Crispina also began showing similar symptoms, indicating her connection with the priest. In a state of emotional breakdown, she screamed that she was not a woman of God. That night, she was forcibly taken to a psychiatric hospital against her will. Margaret did not dare to tell the truth. 4 years had passed since she arrived at the convent. Christmas was approaching, and the girls were given tangerines and allowed to watch a film. Suddenly, Margaret's grown-up brother appeared at the doorstep. He brought a letter from the local priest. It stated that Margaret was now free and could return home. She packed her things, and in the corridor, she blocked the path of a nun. The nun ordered her to move, but Margaret firmly said that she would not budge. For the others, everything remained the same. Daily hard labor. One day, Katie fell ill, and Bernadette was assigned to stay with her. Katie recalled how long ago her mother had warned her to stay away from soldiers. But she became pregnant and eventually ended up in the convent. Bernadette told her that the nuns didn't care about her, just like they didn't care about any of the girls. Rose approached Sister Bridget with a request to send a birthday card to her son, but the nun wouldn't even listen. Later, Rose saw the key to the safe but said nothing. Outside, Rose spotted her sister and Crispina's son. Neither of them had been told that Crispina had been transferred to a psychiatric hospital. She tried to tell them the truth, but the nuns stopped her. Soon after, Katie died, and Rose was harshly punished for attempting to speak to someone from the outside world. Bernadette witnessed this just as she had come to speak with Rose. That night, she told Rose that unlike Margaret, no one would come for them, so escape was their only chance. Bernadette found the key, and they decided to run away. The nuns tried to stop them, but Bernadette, filled with determination, stood up to them. The girls escaped through the gates and sought help from a random woman in the city. Before leaving, Rose said goodbye to her and to Bernadette. Rose went to Liverpool, while Bernadette stayed and began training to become a hairdresser. Now she's not afraid of anyone because she's become a respected woman. One day, as it rained, she took shelter under a canopy and happened to find herself near the very nuns who had left such a deep mark on her memory. Remembering the past, Bernadette let down her luxurious hair, a symbol of freedom. Then a voiceover tells the audience about the real-life fate of the heroines of this story. Bernadette eventually moved to Scotland, opened her own beauty salon, and was married 3 times. Rose also married and had 2 daughters. In 1996, she was able to find her son. Margaret became a teacher and later a deputy school principal. She never married. Crispina sadly died in 1971 in a psychiatric hospital. The last Magdalen laundry was closed in 1996. During the lifetime of these institutions, more than 30,000 women were held there. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, give it a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.